Welcome to tonight's sleep story. Let's drift into a soothing story together as you begin your journey into a restful and rejuvenating sleep. You stand at the foot of an ancient medieval castle, its towering walls rising above you, silent and imposing against the vibrant blue sky. The stone of the castle is dark, weathered by centuries of history, each crack in the surface a reminder of the countless stories it has witnessed. The wind carries a faint whiff of damp earth, mixing with the rustle of leaves in the trees surrounding the fortress. As you take a step forward, you feel the cool, solid stone beneath your feet, an unyielding reminder that this place, built to last through centuries, is a monument to power, yet tainted with secrets. The castle seems to watch you, its towering walls speaking volumes, their stone faces etched with years of fierce battles and intrigue. The sight of it is awe-inspiring, a fortress designed for protection, yet in its imposing strength, you sense an underlying danger. The air feels thick with history, as though the whispers of those who once inhabited these walls still echo through the corridors. The sound of the wind seems to sigh through the stone, as if the castle itself is breathing. Alive with the weight of time, you step closer to the massive entrance, feeling the cold, heavy wooden doors that stand before you. The gates, made of thick oak, creak open slowly, revealing the inner fortress that lies beyond. As you pass through the doorway, the air changes, darker, cooler, filled with the faint smell of dust, stone, and old wood. It is as though you have entered a world apart, a place where time has frozen in the shadows and the cavernous halls that stretch out before you. The silence is palpable as you move deeper into the heart of the castle. You can hear the faint echo of your footsteps, the sound swallowed by the heavy stone walls. It feels as though the very stones themselves are watching, standing sentry to the history that has unfolded within these walls. The narrow staircases lead up into the darkness, their stone steps worn smooth by the feet of countless generations, each turning point marked by years of life, death, and intrigue. But as you move through the castle, something feels off. The air is thick, almost oppressive, as though the weight of the castle itself is pressing down on you. The cool draft of wind that creeps through cracks in the walls sends a shiver down your spine, a reminder that this fortress, though designed for protection, was also built to trap. You realize that the very walls, which are meant to shield, are also responsible for the danger that lurks within hidden hazards lie in wait. The treacherous design of the castle ensuring that even those who sought its protection could easily fall victim to its deadly flaws. The scent of damp stone is strong here, the darkness swallowing the light, leaving you with the sense that the castle's interior is not just a shelter, but a giant tomb. As you explore deeper into its vast chambers, you feel the weight of history bearing down on you. The stone walls seem to whisper the stories of those who have come and gone, the lives lost, the battles fought, the secrets buried within these very halls. You step into an ancient hallway, where the walls are lined with tapestries and shields, the remnants of a time long past. The coldness of the stone floors beneath your feet makes the hairs on your arms stand up. It's as if the air here is thick with memories, some forgotten, some preserved by time, all of them tangled in the very fabric of this stone fortress. And this place where silence reigns, You can almost hear the faint echo of footsteps, the clinking of armor, the laughter of banquets long gone, and the cries of those who died within these walls. The castle stands as a silent sentinel to the irony of its own existence, a place of both protection and peril, a place that promised safety, yet delivered only danger. Disease and death dot, you continue your exploration deeper into the castle, each step feeling like a journey further into its heart. The corridors seem to stretch endlessly, their low ceilings making the air feel even heavier. As your fingers graze the cold, rough-hewn stone of the walls, you feel the unease growing within you, a subtle awareness that beneath this majestic, towering structure lies a world built to entrap. Every detail of this fortress, well crafted for defense, has also been designed to leave its occupants at the mercy of its own flaws. The first thing that catches your eye are the narrow staircases winding up the castle towers. Their steps, worn smooth from centuries of use, seem to be designed not for ease of movement, but to slow you down, to trap you in place should danger come from above. You can't help but feel the claustrophobia setting in, the walls seemingly closing in around you with each upward step. The stairs are steep and uneven, slick with age, and you feel the danger in every step, knowing that a wrong move could send you tumbling down into the gloom below. The scent of damp stone grows more intense, the cold air seeping into your skin, the dim light barely able to cut through the thick shadows. With each turn, the castle feels like it's enclosing on you, its maze-like corridors leading to dead ends and hidden passages. Even the windows are narrow and hard to reach, allowing little light into the space. You begin to realize that this castle, once the symbol of power, is nothing more than a death trap, waiting to be triggered by the smallest mistake dot. As you turn a corner, you find yourself standing before a massive iron door, its surface scratched and worn from years of use. The door opens with a low, unsettling groan, revealing a dark room beyond. It's cold and silent, save for the faint echo of the wind whistling through the cracks. There's an odd sense of foreboding in the air, as if this room has seen more than its fair share of death and despair. Suddenly, a cold realization hits you. This is no ordinary room. Murder holes are etched into the ceiling above, dark holes that lead out to the exterior of the castle. You realize these openings were not designed for ventilation, but for pouring hot oil or stones on any attackers below. Spikes, jagged and sharp, await anyone who dares venture too far into the wrong part of the castle. And yet, these traps were not only for invaders. Those who lived within the castle, nobles, servants, and soldiers, were just as likely to fall victim to them. The thought of the sudden, brutal deaths that these traps could cause chills you to the core. The arches above you, though beautiful in their design, are now only reminders of the dark side of these castles. The incredible strength of the walls, meant to defend against attackers, now seem like the very prison of those who once called these walls home. As you make your way through more rooms, you find yourself surrounded by walls that feel increasingly impenetrable. The design of these fortresses, while practical for warfare, was also a series of calculated risks. Hidden passages that could easily lead to accidents, stairs that were steep and treacherous, and tunnels that were so dark and narrow, they became the perfect hiding place for disease. You notice the lack of proper ventilation, the smell of rotting food and stale air, and you realize that these dangers were not just physical, but biological too. In the deeper chambers of the castle, there is a sense of constant danger, that knowledge that sickness could spread quickly through these narrow, damp spaces. The lack of proper sanitation systems made this place a breeding ground for disease. You can feel the weight of the past on your shoulders now, the ghosts of those who perished due to the lack of basic health care and safety. It is almost as though the walls themselves hold the remnants of their suffering, the memories of the deaths caused by the castle's own deadly design. The contradiction of this fortress is staggering. Built to protect its people, it instead created constant danger, not just from invaders, but from within. Each room, each passage, is a reminder of how these beautiful fortresses of power could just as easily become the tombs of those who sought shelter within them. You can't shake the feeling that you're walking through a maze of death, each corner revealing another lethal secret. As you venture further into the heart of the castle, the heavy air seems to thicken, pressing down on you. The narrow hallways and gloomy chambers are like veins, leading deeper into the castle's pulse, a pulse that seems stagnant and oppressive. There is an eerie, almost tangible silence that surrounds this place. It's not just the absence of sound, but a quiet emptiness that feels like the walls themselves are holding their breath. It's the kind of silence that clings to the edges of your mind, making you feel as though the castle is alive, watching you move through its darkened halls. The oppressive stone beneath your feet feels cold, and as you touch it, a faint chill runs up your spine. The air smells faintly of damp wood, of something decayed and forgotten. Despite the fortress's towering strength, there's an overwhelming sense of fragility that emanates from its inner chambers, a reminder that while these castles were built to last, the people who lived within them were vulnerable. Trapped in their own creation, you pass through wide, empty chambers, their stone walls adorned with faded tapestries, once vibrant with scenes of grandeur, now worn and threadbare, symbols of a bygone era. The windows, narrow and set high in. The walls, let in only small slivers of light, casting long, thin shadows across the cold floors. The once grand dining halls, where the elite would have sat feasting, now seem like tombs echoing only with the faint squeak of rats in the corners, and the occasional creaking of the ceiling. These spaces, which once echoed with laughter and music, are now hauntingly silent. The servants once bustling about in these halls have long since gone. Only their memories linger, etched in the very air of the castle. You can almost hear the faint footsteps of those who once worked here, their daily tasks now distant memories. The sense of ghostly presence is overwhelming, as though the castle itself is alive with the souls of those who once lived, worked, and died within its walls. It is in these chambers, amid the haunting silence, that you begin to understand the psychological toll of castle life. To live here was to be constantly aware of the fragility of life. One wrong step, one mistake, could lead to death. Whether from disease, a fall, or a trap, the possibility of danger was ever present. For those who lived here, there was no peace. Only a constant state of alertness. The servants, who were the backbone of castle life, lived in constant fear, not just of external threats, but of the castle's own lethal design. The narrow corridors, the crumbling stone walls, the hidden passages that led to nowhere, and the treacherous staircases that seemed to shift underfoot, these were the hazards they faced daily. It wasn't just the nobility who were at risk. Every person, from the highest lord to the humblest servant, lived with the knowledge that they could meet their end unexpectedly. Through the castle's own design dot, as you move deeper into the castle, you encounter the inner sanctum of the Lord's chambers, the throne room where decisions of life and death were made. Even here, there is no sense of safety, only a stifling weight of authority that feels as though it presses down on your chest. The cold iron gates are a constant reminder that power is maintained through control of the people within. These walls and control of life itself. In these rooms, the Lord's word was law, but even they were not free from the dangers of the castle's design. The Lord's bed, large and ornate, is positioned against a wall that seems to sag with age. A faint odor of mildew rises from the thick tapestries that cover the walls, and the large stone fireplace crackles faintly with a dying fire. You can feel the tension in the air, as though the room is holding its breath, waiting for something to break the weight of authority and the fear of what lies beyond the walls. Even the Lord was not immune to the constant threats that came with living in the castle, but perhaps the most disturbing aspect of castle life was the sense of isolation. Here, surrounded by walls designed to keep enemies out, there was no escape from the oppressive weight of the castle's design. No matter the power, no matter the wealth, those who lived here were trapped physically within the walls and psychologically within their own minds. They were isolated, not just from the world outside, but from each other. The Lord could never truly trust those around him, for even the castle's most trusted servants could fall prey to the castle's dark nature dot as you step back outside the castle's towering walls. The contrast between the interior and the open air feels stark. The cool breeze greets you as you stand before the imposing structure, still beautiful in its own way, but now imbued with a sense of uncertainty. From the outside, the castle's majesty and strength are undeniable. The battlements stretch high into the sky, and the glint of sunlight off the metalwork shines like a beacon of security. But the sense of power quickly fades as you recall the treacherous interior, where every corner and crevice seemed designed to ensure the survival of the few at the expense of the many. The further you move away from the castle, the more you realize the paradox at its core, the very thing that was meant to protect those inside. The impenetrable walls, the towering gates, became the very thing that trapped them. Those who sought refuge within its stone embrace were not kept safe, but rather confined within a cage of their own making, subject to the castle's own design flaws. The strength that was meant to repel invaders turned into the prison that imprisoned its own inhabitants. As you stand at the edge of the castle, you can see the expanse of the land stretching out before you. The horizon seems so vast, and yet, inside those walls, you would have felt utterly isolated, as though the world beyond was a distant dream. The walls' towering height intended to provide a sense of dominance, instead created a sense of entrapment, limiting one's view of the world in connection to others. Even the broad open sky above seemed out of reach for those living within, moving Back inside, you find yourself in the grand hall of the castle. Here, the grand stone fireplace would have once been a source of warmth and light, but now it only casts long, flickering shadows, revealing the emptiness of the room. The tapestries, though vibrant in color, seem worn and faded, like the ghosts of the grand feast that once took place here. You notice how the stone floor is uneven in places, worn down by countless feet that walked these halls. Trapped in this very space stood the servants, always busy tending to the needs of the nobles, were the true captives within these walls. They were at the mercy of the castle's design, constantly reminded that they were subject to the same fragility as the castle itself. The narrow staircases, the hidden traps, the lack of sanitation all contributed to a life that was less about service and more about survival. The castle, which should have been a place of comfort and protection, became a place of constant anxiety, with every shadow and every creak in the walls representing a potential threat dot as you explore further into the castle. You come across an ancient chamber at the farthest edge of the keep, its heavy wooden door locked tight. The air inside is stagnant, and the stone is thick with the scent of mildew and age. There are no windows here, no light except for the flickering glow of your torch. You can't help but wonder if this was once a dungeon, a place where the very essence of fear lingered. The thought of being locked away in such a dark, isolated place sends a chill through you. Even the lord of the castle, with all his wealth and power, was not exempt from the shackles of his own creation. Power here was a paradox. It offered security, but also demanded constant vigilance. And the toll of such vigilance was mental and physical exhaustion. You imagine the noble families, the rulers of the castle, who would retreat to their chambers at night, seeking solace in their opulent beds, but never finding true peace. The constant hum of the castle's machinery, the echoing of footsteps in the empty halls, the whispers of the wind seeping through cracks in the walls, all these sounds would have been a constant reminder that even in the most luxurious chambers, safety was never guaranteed. The looming threat of danger, whether from a hidden assassin or an unseen trap, was as real within the walls as it was outside dot in the distance. The castle's defensive towers stand strong against the backdrop of the setting sun. The contrast is striking. While the outer defenses are designed to intimidate and protect, the inner space is a labyrinth of risks, a prison masquerading as a sanctuary. The stone walls that once promised safety now serve as a metaphor for the human condition itself, caught between protection and isolation, between strength and fragility. The castle's ability to protect against external threats is undeniable, but its design flaws, its psychological impact, and its dangerous traps leave a sense of vulnerability that no wall, no matter how high, can truly shield Dot as you step back. Outside into the cool, quiet night, you find the castle standing before you in the distance, its silhouette now softened by the gentle glow of the moon. The world around you seems still, and yet, the more you look at the ancient fortress, the more you realize that its legacy is far from gone. The heavy stone walls, once brimming with the bustle of medieval life, now stand in silent testimony to the paradoxes of history. They are not just monuments to power, but also reminders of the fragility of life. the darkness that lies hidden behind every stone, and the impermanence of the forces they were built to protect. The air is still. The faint rustle of leaves in the wind, the only sound that breaks the silence. As you look up at the castle's towering battlements, you feel a sudden heaviness settle in your chest. These walls, which once held the mightiest of knights and the wealthiest of lords, now seem like monuments to fragility. You realize that strength and vulnerability were always intertwined in the design of this fortress. It was meant to stand as an impenetrable symbol of defense and dominance, but in the end, it became a prison for those who sought shelter within it. The lives that were spent inside, those of the nobles, the servants, and even the invaders, all ended up as part of the castle's legacy. Walking further around the castle, you find yourself at the edge of a high tower, its stonework worn by the passage of time. The view from here is breathtaking, the village below, the forest stretching endlessly to the horizon, and the rolling hills in the distance. But despite the beauty of the scene, the very height of the tower makes you feel small, vulnerable, and insignificant. You can't help but wonder what it must have been like to stand at the top of this tower, looking out at the world below, knowing that the same walls that protected you also confined you. From the very top of the castle, the world outside might seem endless, but you know that freedom was never fully attainable within these walls. The towering fortifications of the castle seem to mock the very idea of protection. The gatehouse, the drawbridge, the moat all were designed to keep invaders at bay, but they also served to remind those within that their safety was temporary, their power fragile. The very walls that offered them defense also isolated them from the world, ensuring that no matter how grand their lives might appear on the outside, they were still trapped within the castle's iron grip. The irony lies in the fact that the lords and ladies of the castle, so eager to assert their dominance, were, in reality, the most vulnerable of all. The castle's interior was a battlefield of its own, filled with psychological traps, health risks, and the constant fear of betrayal. The legacy of these castles, however, extends far beyond the physical remnants that still stand today. Are symbols not only of the power of the nobility, but also of the fragility of human life. As centuries passed, these castles became the backdrop for countless stories of glory and tragedy, stories of power gained and lost, of lives cut short by accidents, disease, and betrayal. Their architecture became a lesson in the unintended consequences of human ambition and the dangerous illusions of invulnerability. The castles were symbols of protection, but in reality, they were a constant reminder that nothing lasts forever. Not even power itself. As you stand there, gazing at the silent fortress, you realize that its legacy is not just one of military might or dominion. It is a reminder of the human cost of such power, of the lives that were lost, not only in battle, but within the very walls that were supposed to protect them. The beauty of the castle's design now seems hollow, a reminder that strength alone cannot protect against the fragility of life. The power that the castle once symbolized is now ghosted by the tales of suffering and death that it harbors. Looking back at the dark silhouette of the castle, you sense that its legacy continues to shape not only the land, but the very idea of power and safety. The grand castles of the medieval world may have fallen into ruin, but the lessons they offer still resonate today. They remind us that fortresses, no matter how strong, will always have their weaknesses. And in the end, it is the people, those who live within these walls, those who pass through them, who are left to bear the consequences of a legacy that was built with the best of intentions but resulted in tragedy, the morning after a long night of wandering through the castle. The first rays of sunlight creep through the cracks in the stone, casting a soft golden hue over the ancient walls. The castle stands before you, still and silent, as though it has absorbed the weight of centuries into its very foundation. You gaze up at the castle's towering structure, feeling the chill of its stone walls seeping into your very bones, and wonder what it would have been like to live within its cold embrace. While the grand stonework and towering spires might seem imposing from afar, up close they only reinforce the vulnerability of the people who sought refuge within. The castle's walls, built to defend against invaders, only serve to trap its inhabitants in a state of constant alertness and isolation. The protective features, from the narrow passageways to the high battlements, may have kept out enemies, but they also prevented the freedom of movement and peace that we now take for granted. You walk the grounds, feeling the wind tug at your clothes, as though the castle itself is trying to tell you its story, one that has been passed down through the ages. As you pass beneath the shadow of the towering structure, you reflect on how these fortresses once symbolized not just power, but also fear. The physical strength of the walls was matched only by the psychological strain that came with living inside them. The constant anxiety of defending the castle from threats, both real and imagined, weighed heavily on its occupants. Even within the safety of these walls, there is no true peace. Looking up at the distant battlements, you realize that the legacy of these castles isn't just about the history of warfare or the architecture of the time. It's about the psychological impact they had on the people who lived in them. These structures, built to protect, often led to paranoia, fear, and even mental breakdowns. The overwhelming sense of isolation that came from living in a place so separated from the world outside, with only the stone walls for company, made it easy for these castles to become not just physical fortresses, but mental prisons as well. The design of the castle, though intended for protection, inadvertently reinforced control. The lords and ladies who ruled from within these walls, surrounded by servants and soldiers, were not necessarily free themselves. The grand halls, filled with luxury and opulence, were also spaces where secrets and betrayals thrived. Even the nobility, despite their wealth and power, could not escape the psychological toll of constant vigilance. They too were trapped by the fears and paranoia that pervaded these stone walls. As you explore the inner chambers of the castle, you find that the luxury once lavished on the ruling class now feels hollow. The grand furniture now covered in dust, the tapestries now faded and torn. It is a haunting reminder that no matter how powerful or rich one becomes, the walls of fear constructed both externally and internally are ever present. The lavishness that once filled these rooms now feels empty, just as the power it represented has faded over the centuries. The air grows heavier as you venture into the dungeons, the cold stone walls closing in on you. The scent of musty stone and decay is more pronounced here, a reminder of the lives lost, both noble and humble, within these dark chambers. The dungeon was not just a place of punishment, but a reflection of the darker side of a castle. It symbolizes the human cost of power, how control, authority, and the pursuit of security often come at the expense of the well-being of those who live within. Walking through the dungeon, you cannot help but think of those who are imprisoned, not just in the physical sense, but emotionally and mentally as well. Those who lived in the castle, guarded by its walls, were prisoners in their own way, bound by the power structures they themselves helped create. The fear that permeated the halls, the constant vigilance required to maintain control, all worked together to create an environment of stress, paranoia, and psychological exhaustion. You exit the dungeon and return to the castle's courtyard, now bathed in sunlight. The towering walls cast long shadows, and you feel a slight chill as the cool air brushes against your skin. The castle, still as grand and imposing as ever, now seems different. You see it for what it truly was, not just a fortress of power, but a prison of fear, where the secrets of its rulers and the suffering of its inhabitants were hidden behind. The strength of its stone walls dot as you stand outside the castle. The early morning light bathes the stone in a soft golden hue. The grandeur of the structure is undeniable, but as you reflect on the journey through its dark and treacherous halls, you feel a deep sense of contemplation. The castle, once a fortress of strength and protection, now seems to embody something more, the fragility of power and the cost of security. It is a symbol of both human ambition and human vulnerability, a monument to a time when people lived within walls designed to protect them, but ultimately became the source of their own suffering. As you walk away from the towering structure, you can't help but wonder how much of the fear and paranoia that once gripped the hearts of those within these walls has transcended the centuries. These castles, though now ruins in many cases, continue to influence modern perceptions of safety, security, and power. Their towering presence serves as a reminder that no matter how strong or impenetrable a system may seem, it is always subject to decay, disrepair, and the passage of time. The same fear that gripped the inhabitants of these castles, the fear of being trapped, the fear of the unknown, the fear of losing power, still echoes in the way we understand authority and control today. As you leave the castle grounds, you begin to see how the lessons of the past continue to shape the present. The fortresses of today, not physical but symbolic, still reflect the same desire for protection, the same obsession with control. Modern governments, corporations, and institutions are built on the same foundations that medieval castles were. The desire to protect, to dominate, to control. And yet, like the castles of old, they are vulnerable to the same forces: decay, corruption, and the inevitable collapse of systems that once seemed impenetrable. The castles of today are no longer made of stone and mortar, but of rules, laws, and social constructs. And just as those medieval fortresses could not protect their inhabitants from the hidden dangers lurking within, the systems we build today often fail to safeguard us from the psychological toll of living within them. Surveillance, secrecy, and control have replaced the physical walls, yet the paranoia and isolation remain, and in many cases have only grown more insidious. In your mind's eye, you begin to see the parallel between the fortress and the mind. Just as the narrow corridors and hidden traps of the castle constrain the movements of its inhabitants, so too do the walls of society constrain us. We build these structures to feel safe, to protect ourselves from the chaos of the world, but they often end up creating more fear of the unknown, fear of losing control, and fear of isolation. In the end, the cost of safety, whether in the form of stone walls or social barriers, may not be worth the toll. It takes on our freedom and mental well-being. As you move further from the castle, you reflect on the ways in which these physical fortresses of power were, in many ways, not so different from the mental fortresses we build for ourselves today. They are designed to protect us, to give us a sense of security, but in the process, they often leave us trapped within our own fears, insecurities, and paranoia. In the pursuit of safety, we often create the very conditions that make us vulnerable. Legacy of the medieval castle is not just in its stone walls, but in the way it continues to shape our perception of power, protection, and control. The echoes of those who lived and died within its confines are still felt today in our societies, our institutions, and even our minds. The walls may have crumbled, but the fear, the power, and the paranoia persist. As the castle stands silently. In the distance, a solemn reminder of the past, you feel the weight of time pressing down upon you. The walls that once held noble feasts, games, and public displays of power are now empty, but their influence persists. These grand performances, meant to reinforce the authority of the nobility, have evolved into something that still shapes society today. You begin to realize that although the medieval spectacle of tournaments, jousts, and lavish banquets is long gone, the spirit of spectacle has never disappeared. Instead, it has been woven into the fabric of modern life, from grand sporting events to public trials of political figures where the masses are invited to watch, judge, and revel in the drama of those in power. The games of medieval times were more than just moments of entertainment. They were powerful tools of control. The nobles, with their wealth and influence, used these spectacles to remind the common folk of their place in society. It wasn't enough for them to simply rule. They needed to display their power, to entertain their subjects, to show them that they were not only rulers of the land, but also the masters of their minds. Whether it was through the pomp and circumstance of a grand feast or the brutal display of strength in a joust, the nobility kept their people in check with a lure of spectacle, prestige, and fear. You can almost hear the laughter echoing through the castle halls, the sounds of feasts where the rich dined on delicacies, their goblets filled with the finest wines, while the peasants watched from the edges, marveling at the power and wealth that stood before them. The pageantry of it all was designed to reinforce the idea that the nobles were the masters and the commoners were there to serve and admire. The entertainment was never just about fun. It was a performance in which everyone played their part. As you stand near the edge of the castle's vast courtyard, you can almost picture the tournaments unfolding before you, the knights in shining armor, charging at each other on horseback, the cheering of the crowd filling the air. But what you can also sense, if you listen closely, is the underlying tension in the atmosphere. For while the spectacle was designed to entertain, It also served as a reminder that the knights, the nobles, and the rulers were above the rest, that their authority was unquestionable. The games were not just for fun, they were a way to reaffirm their dominance, to remind the people of the power structures that govern their lives. You reflect on how modern sports and public spectacles have become the heirs to this tradition. What was once reserved for the nobility has now been democratized, but the spirit of these events remains the same. The Olympics, football games, reality shows, and even political campaigns all serve a similar purpose: to entertain and to reinforce the power dynamics of our society. The masses gather to watch their favorite athletes, celebrities, or political figures perform, and in doing so, they reaffirm the structures of power that govern their lives. The rules may have changed, the participants may be different, but the audience is still asked to bow before the spectacle. The public eye, once commanded by the nobility, is now something that can be wielded by anyone in power, whether through social media, television, or public events. The essence of the medieval spectacle, the idea that power can be displayed, manipulated, and reinforced through performance, has seeped into the very fabric of modern culture. As you stand there, contemplating the castle's role in the performance of power, you begin to see the continuity between the past and the present, between the medieval lords and the modern celebrities. The games may be different, but the game itself remains unchanged. The masses, now spread across the world, are still drawn to the spectacle, still eager to watch the performance, still willing to surrender their gaze and energy to those who control the narrative. Whether it's a knight on horseback or a politician on stage, the audience is always waiting to see who will win, who will rule, and who will be left behind. The stakes may have changed, but the desire for spectacle has remained a constant in human nature. You think about how these displays of power affect our daily lives. How often do we see these performances, not just on the grand stage, but in the small, everyday moments? The media, the politics, the corporate world, all of these spaces are filled with the same patterns of performance. The stakes may be different, but the mechanics of control remain the same. The castle and its glory might have crumbled, but its spirit lives on. And so too does the game that was once played within its walls. As the echoes of grand tournaments and public spectacles fade into the night, you find yourself walking through the village streets, now bathed in the soft glow of the moon. The crowds have dispersed, the laughter and cheer now distant memories, leaving behind only the soft whispers of the wind as it rustles through the leaves of nearby trees. Yet in the silence that follows the chaos of festivities, there remains a profound sense of resilience in the air, woven into the very fabric of this medieval world. It's a resilience not born from grand monuments or public performances, but from the simple pleasures of life that persist despite the weight of the world. The humble peasants, who make up the backbone of this medieval village, return to their homes, their work, and their routines. They do not seek the excitement of jousts or the rich feasts enjoyed by the nobility. Instead, their joy is found in the quiet rhythms of daily life, in the laughter of children playing in the fields, in the shared moments of rest after a hard day's labor, in the simple pleasure of a warm meal after a long day in the fields. The earth beneath your feet feels solid, ancient, yet alive, pulsing with the quiet energy of generations that have walked here before you, living their lives with dignity, even in the shadow of overwhelming odds. You follow the sound of voices, rising from a small gathering near a modest wooden house. A circle of workers, their faces flushed from the day's labor, sit around a fire. The warmth of the flames contrasts with the crisp night air that carries the sense of earth and wood. They're not gathered for anything grand or formal. They have no need for elaborate festivals or public games to bring them joy. They simply gather together, as they have done for centuries, to share stories, to reminisce, and to enjoy the simple pleasure of one another's company. The flickering firelight casts gentle shadows on their faces, the sound of their voices rising in a soft rhythmic chorus, a familiar comfort in the stillness of the night. One of the workers, an old man with a weathered face and a long, graying beard, begins to sing a folk song, his voice deep and raspy but filled with heart. The others join in, their voices harmonizing in the same way they have harmonized for generations. No instruments, just the pure simplicity of human connection. You close your eyes and allow the soft, melodic rhythm of the song to wash over you. The fire crackles, sending occasional puffs of warmth into the cold air, while the songs of the workers rise and fall like the gentle flow of a river dot in this moment. The vastness of the medieval world, the grand feasts, the lavish tournaments, the dark public punishments, seems to fade into the background. The true heart of this world lies in the simple moments of human connection, in the shared laughter, the joy of community, and the quiet strength of the people who find their happiness not in extravagance, but in the ordinary. The workers, having spent their days in the fields, tending to the land and animals, now find solace in one another's company, in their ability to laugh together, to share their stories, and to unite over the simple joys of being human. Even as you stand by the fire, listening to their song, you feel a deep sense of gratitude for these moments, the quiet, unassuming joys of everyday life that are too often overshadowed by the grandeur of the world. The festivals and tournaments will come and go, the rulers will change, and the great monuments will eventually crumble, but the resilience of the people, their ability to find joy in the small, simple things will remain. The workers who sing their songs by the fire, the children who play in the streets, the families who share their meals together, they're the true heroes of this medieval world, and their stories, though never sung by bards or immortalized in stone, are the stories that matter most as the fire begins to fade and the night deepens. You join in their song, your voice blending with theirs. The melody is simple, but it carries a profound truth that the greatest joys in life often come not from the grand, but from the humble, from the small moments that make up the vast tapestry of life. You feel the warmth of the fire, the connection to those around you, and the simple truth that no matter the challenges or hardships you may face, you are never truly alone. The rhythm of life goes on, and in the simplicity of the moment, there is peace as the village settles into the quiet of the night, with only the distant chirping of crickets and the occasional whisper of the wind to break the stillness. You reflect on everything you've experienced during your journey through the castle's ruins and the surrounding village. The grand spectacles, the medieval tournaments, and the lavish feasts have come to an end, but their influence lingers, like the soft glow of embers that continue to warm the hearth long after the fire has died down. The echoes of laughter, the sounds of the crowds cheering, and the joy of shared experiences continue to resonate through time, still reaching us in the modern world. You realize that the medieval world, with all its spectacles and rituals, was not just about power and control, it was also about human connection. The grand tournaments were more than just displays of strength. They were a way for people to come together to celebrate life and to feel part of something larger than themselves. The laughter, the games, and the stories shared by the villagers are not mere relics of the past. They are the very essence of humanity, the desire to connect, to find joy in life, even when faced with hardship and struggle. You stand in the village square, the soft light of the moon casting long shadows on the cobblestones. The echoes of public games and banquets still feel alive in the air, and you begin to see how the joys of medieval entertainment continue to shape our lives. Today, from the Olympics to modern-day sports, from grand festivals to celebrations of art and music, the spirit of medieval entertainment has not faded. It has merely evolved, adapted, and found new ways to bring people together. You feel a deep sense of connection, as though the ancient celebrations of medieval life are still alive within you, shaping the way you experience the world today. The games you watch, the festivals you attend, and even the rituals that mark the passage of time, these are all part of the same human desire to celebrate, to find joy in life's fleeting moments. The medieval world, in all its grandeur and simplicity, has left an indelible mark on the way we interact with one another, and these shared moments of joy have become a universal language that transcends time, culture, and place. You think about the grand tournaments, you read about the knights charging against one another, their armor shining, their horses galloping across the fields in a display of raw power and skill. While the knights may be gone, their legacy lives on in the competitive sports of today. The gladiatorial games that once filled the arena are now replaced by athletic competitions that bring people together in celebration of human strength and endurance. The spirit of the competition, the thrill of watching others perform, is still as strong as it ever was. But it's not just the spectacles of the past that resonate with us today. The humble gatherings of villagers, the simple acts of sitting around a fire, sharing a meal, telling stories, and singing songs are just as important. These quiet, everyday moments of connection are the backbone of the medieval spirit that continues to shape the way we find joy today. The performers, the minstrels, the jesters who once roamed these streets are now the performers of today, musicians, comedians, and artists who entertain and uplift us, reminding us that laughter is a vital part of our collective existence. As you stand in the village square, listening to the faint hum of distant laughter, you begin to understand that the legacy of medieval entertainment is not just about the past. It is very much alive in the present, and it will continue to be part of our future. The desire to come together, to celebrate, to laugh, and to share stories is a timeless impulse that binds us together as humans. No matter how much time passes, you take a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill your lungs, and you smile to yourself The past, with all its complexities, dangers, and grandiose spectacles, has shaped who we are today. But it is the simple joys, the laughter, the stories, and the music that will continue to carry us forward, generation after generation. The legacy of the medieval entertainers, the minstrels, the jesters, and the common folk who found joy in the simplest moments is a legacy that will never fade out as the moon rises higher in the sky. You feel a sense of peace settle within you. The castle, the games, and the medieval world are now behind you, but their spirit lives on. The laughter, the shared joy, and the human connection that were once celebrated in the castles and villages of the past continue to be part of our lives today. And in that, you find a sense of comfort, a reminder that no matter where we come, from no matter how far we've come, the joy of togetherness, of simple pleasures, will always be with us, Dot, as you stand in the shadow of the ancient castle. The events of the past seem to intertwine with the present, creating a surreal blend of history and modernity. The world around you has changed, yet the echoes of medieval entertainment still reverberate in the way we live today. From the spectacles of old to the mass media of today, the desire to entertain, to control, and to fascinate the masses has only grown stronger with time. The grand tournaments and feasts that once filled the castle's halls have evolved into the sports arenas, political spectacles, and media events that dominate our world. Dot. As you look out over the modern landscape, you see a world filled with spectacles, whether it's the thrill of a live sports event, the drama of reality TV, or the powerful performances of politicians and leaders. The world may have changed, but the human desire to be entertained and to feel connected through shared experiences remains the same. The grand games of medieval times were designed to remind the people of their place in the social hierarchy, to entertain and distract them, while simultaneously reinforcing the power of the ruling class. And yet, these spectacles weren't merely distractions, they were tools of control used to distract, manipulate, and unite people under the same dominant force. Today, the spectacle has become more sophisticated. The global media has taken on the role once held by the medieval lords, using television, social media, and the internet to control narratives, dictate trends, and shape public opinion. The tools have evolved, but the psychological impact is the same. The audience, whether in the medieval courtyard or the modern living room, remains passive, swept up in the drama and the performance. Just as the medieval games were used to keep the people entertained and distracted from the harshness of their lives, today's media often serves the same purpose, keeping us glued to our screens, constantly fed with entertainment, all while subtly reinforcing the status quo. The nobility of the past knew the power of performance, of putting on a grand show that would make the people feel the majesty of their rule, even as they remained disconnected from the realities of their subjects' lives. Today, this performance continues through the media and celebrity culture. The politician becomes a performer, the athlete a spectacle, and the entertainers are elevated to the status of gods, all offering glamour and distraction in exchange for our attention and ultimately our obedience. The modern spectacle is no less powerful than the medieval joust, for it serves the same purpose: to distract, to unite, and to manipulate, But there is an irony here, just as there was in the medieval world. The very tools that were used to keep the masses under control, to remind them of their place, have now become tools of empowerment. Social media, once a tool for entertainment, is now a platform for social movements and political expression. Sporting events, once used to distract the common folk from their struggles, have now become stages for athletes to challenge societal norms and raise awareness about issues. The spectacle has evolved, and with it, the audience has changed. We no longer passively watch the performances, we participate, challenge, and interact with them. The ancient games of the past, while they once served to reinforce authority, now serve as a reminder of the power of the people. Modern entertainment, though still steeped in the tradition of the spectacle, is now being used to question and redefine the power structures that once held us captive. What began as a tool for control has become a space for transformation where people can now create their own narratives, challenge systems of power, and demand change. As you continue to walk through the castle ruins, the echoes of the past grow fainter, replaced by the sounds of modern life, the hum of conversation, the buzz of technology, the distant roar of crowds at a sporting event. The medieval world, with its opulent displays of power, may be gone, but its legacy lives on in the spectacles that continue to shape our understanding of entertainment, power, and control. The medieval games have evolved, but the human desire to celebrate, to entertain, and to feel connected is as strong as it has ever been. The castle stands as a symbol of that transformation, a reminder that the past and present are not as disconnected as they may seem. The same forces that once shaped medieval life, the desire for power, for control, for spectacle, continue to influence us today. Yet, as we move forward, we also reshape these forces, using them not just to maintain power, but to question it, to transform it, and to create new forms of entertainment that empower rather than subjugate. As the soft murmur of modern life continues to surround you, you reflect on the lasting impact of the medieval world and its influence on how we experience entertainment today. You stand once more before the ruins of the castle, its towering presence a silent testament to the passing of time. The grand tournaments and festivals that once filled the air with sound and excitement have long since faded into the pages of history. Yet their essence persists. These ancient spectacles were not just entertainment, they were performances designed to communicate something deeper, something about power, control, and the very nature of the society in which they existed. The jousting tournaments that once brought knights to the field, their armor gleaming under the sun, were not only contests of strength and skill, they were public displays of the dominance of the noble class, a way for the lords to remind the common folk of their status. As you think back on these medieval spectacles, you realize that the roots of modern entertainment, the athletic events, the reality shows, the political spectacles are woven from the same threads. We are drawn to performances not just for the thrill of the competition, but because they reflect the very power dynamics that continue to shape our world. These games are no longer just about the noble elite. They have become a global platform, one that serves not only to entertain, but to reinforce and question the forces of power that govern our lives. Walking through the streets of the modern world, You see how the spectacles of today continue the legacy of the medieval games. The Olympics, the Super Bowl, and even the red carpet events are modern day versions of the medieval tournaments, grand, competitive, and designed to elicit admiration and awe from the masses. But they also reflect a society that is more aware than ever of the power these events hold. In the medieval past, the king's joust was a performance of authority, a way to demonstrate power over the common folk. Today, those same performances are broadcasted globally, reaching millions, if not billions, of viewers, connecting people through the shared experience of spectacle. Yet, even as these events have grown in scale, the underlying purpose remains the same: to provide entertainment that reinforces the status quo, to keep the masses engaged and distracted from the intricacies of power dynamics that shape their daily lives. The grand feasts that were once held in the halls of the castle, where nobles sat and feasted while the common folk waited on them, have morphed into the lavish galas, award ceremonies, and celebrity events that continue to dominate the public eye today. These events may no longer be a direct reflection of social hierarchies, but they still showcase the same elite performances, where the wealthy and powerful are placed at the center of attention. The red carpet becomes the modern-day version of the medieval throne room, where the performers, be they athletes, politicians, or celebrities, are treated as gods, receiving the adoration and praise of the public. But beyond the powerful elite on stage, the audience has also undergone a profound transformation. The medieval games were meant to keep the common folk in their place, to remind them of their status and role in society. Yet today, the audience is no longer passive. With the advent of social media, instant communication, and global connectivity, the audience has become active participants in the spectacle. They vote, comment, and create content of their own, often challenging the very systems of power and control that the spectacle is meant to reinforce. The medieval joust might have been a one-way performance, with the audience watching and the knight performing, but in the modern world, the audience is no longer just a spectator. They shape the narrative, challenge the performers, and ultimately determine the outcome of the spectacle. This shift in power is significant. In the past, the spectacle was used to reinforce the authority of the powerful. Today, the spectacle is often used to question authority. The same games, the same performances that once reinforced the dominance of the nobility, now provide a platform for social change and revolutionary ideas. You think of how movements like #MeToo, Black Lives Matter, and countless other social movements have used the power of the media spectacle to challenge and dismantle long-standing systems of oppression. The power of performance, once used to oppress, has now become a tool for empowerment. As you continue walking through the streets of the modern world, you see how the spectacles of the past continue to shape the present. The performances may have changed in form, but the need for human connection, the desire for shared experiences, and the inherent fascination with power have remained constant. The legacy of the medieval games is still alive today, not just in the grand sporting events or celebrity performances, but in the way we engage with the world, how we watch, participate, and ultimately shape the spectacle. As you stand before the remnants of the castle, the towering walls that once defined its power, you begin to sense something profound. These grand structures, though they may crumble with time, leave behind echoes. The spectacles that once dominated the lives of the medieval people, the games, the feasts, the tournaments, have long since faded from the physical world. But their impact, that lives on, woven deeply into the very fabric of modern society. These ancient forms of entertainment, crafted by those in power to maintain control, have shaped not only the physical structures of the world, but also the cultural narratives we live by. The games played in the castles, the rituals of public power and spectacle set the stage for the modern media we consume. From televised sports to the reality shows we tune into, these forms of public entertainment serve as a mirror to the medieval court, a place where the masses come to watch, to learn, and to reflect on their place in the world. The spectators in the castle grounds, watching the knights clash in tournaments, are not so different from today's audiences gathered to watch the games, the performances, and the political dramas that unfold on screens and stages around the world. You begin to realize that the collective memory of these ancient spectacles, their ritualistic displays of power, still resonate with us today. These performances, though vastly changed in form, carry with them the same lessons, the same reminders of who is in control and who is excluded. Medieval knights were not just fighting for honor and glory. They were performing for the masses, solidifying the power of their lords and showing their loyalty to the ruling class. Today, athletes, politicians, and performers continue to play out these same roles in front of audiences who are just as eager to watch, to judge, and to adore. But there is also a subtle shift in how we engage with these spectacles. The world is no longer as easily controlled by a single power. The rise of social media, citizen journalism, and public movements has shifted the balance of power. Now, it is not just the elite who control the spectacle, it is the audience, the people, who once merely watched, who now have the power to shape the narrative. The medieval games, which once served to reinforce the status quo, have become the modern arenas for social change, where people can challenge the system and demand a new narrative. You think of the protests, the marches, and the viral movements that have sparked all over the world, all born from the same desire to be heard, to reclaim the stage, to demand a change in the way the world is run. The castles of old, with their grand displays of authority, are no longer the only places where power is wielded. The modern spectacle, be it a football match, a televised debate, or a viral social media post, is a battlefield where the masses engage with power, reflect on their status, and shape the future. You stand in the castle's shadow. Know aware that these ancient structures of stone and power still have a powerful hold on us, even if their physical form has crumbled into dust. Their legacy lives on, not in the walls, but in the way we continue to perform, to entertain, and to connect with one another. The modern media may have replaced the feasts, the jousts, and the public executions, but the desire for connection, the need for spectacle, for shared experience remains unchanged. The psychological toll that these spectacles once took on the people who lived under their shadow has been transferred into the modern world. People still seek distraction, still look for escape, and still find meaning in the grand performances of the day. Whether through the escapism of watching TV shows or the thrill of sports, we all continue to play our parts in the great spectacle of modern life. Much like the peasants of the past who watched the knights joust, dreaming of a better life or simply escaping the hardships of their own, yet there is also a great hope in this continuity. In the past, the spectacle was used to reinforce the power structures, to remind the people of their place in society. Today, the spectacle has become a place where voices can be raised, where people can organize, protest, and demand change. The very tools of oppression have been turned on their heads, and the people, once mere spectators, are now the ones directing. The play dot as the castle fades into the distance. You pause for a moment to look back. The stone walls that once symbolized power and protection are now nothing more than ruins. But within these remains, there is a quiet strength, a reminder of the paradoxes of the past. The grandiose spectacles, the games, the feasts, and the performances that once filled these halls may be gone, but the legacy of those times is far from forgotten. The medieval castles, now silent and weathered by the passing centuries, stand as silent sentinels to the human condition, reflecting both the strength and the vulnerability inherent in all societies. In the shadows of these ancient walls, you begin to see that the legacy of power and spectacle is not just confined to the past. The castles, with their oppressive design, their hidden traps, and their constant reminder of human fragility, still resonate in modern life. The grand displays of wealth and authority have been replaced by new forms of power, new spectacles. But the human desire for spectacle, for entertainment, for connection remains unchanged. The very nature of power, how it is displayed and understood, is deeply rooted in the lessons of the past. The modern world, with its media spectacles, sports events, and celebrity culture, continues to reflect the very social dynamics and psychological patterns seen in medieval times. The performance of power, the distracting of the masses, and the reinforcement of social structures are just as prevalent today as they were within the castle walls. Yet there is a shift. The audience, once passive, is now an active participant, no longer just watching from the sidelines, but shaping the narrative, challenging the systems of power that have been put in place. The spectacle has changed, but its purpose remains fundamentally the same: to unite, to distract, and sometimes to control. But as you walk further into the world beyond the castle's shadow, you begin to understand that the true power of the castle's legacy lies not in the grand displays of wealth and glory, but in the small moments of connection and community that were hidden beneath the surface. The villagers who gathered around the fire, sharing their stories and their songs, the workers who found joy in the simplicity of human interaction, these were the true heroes of the medieval world. Their legacy, unlike the castles themselves, has endured, and it is in these simple, quiet moments that the true spirit of life is found. You reflect on the modern world, its masses of spectators, its grand shows, and its constant chasing of spectacle. Despite all the advancements in technology, despite all the changes in power structures, the human need for connection remains the same. The medieval castle, with all its grandeur and dark history, has evolved into the modern world's media, sports, and entertainment industry, but its legacy has shifted. No longer are we merely passive viewers of the spectacle. Today we create it, we shape it, and we question it. As you look ahead, you realize that the legacy of the medieval castles is not one of oppression, but of transformation. These structures of power, once designed to enforce dominance, have now become symbols of change, reminders of the ways in which the audience can shape the future. Just as the people of medieval times watched the knights joust and the nobility feasted, we too watch and participate in the spectacles of today. But now, the narrative is no longer controlled by a select few. We are the audience, and we are also the storytellers. We hold the power to define the future of entertainment, to challenge the systems of control, and to shape the legacy of power that continues to unfold in the world around us.